Hallo zusammen, einen schönen guten Abend. Es ist Montagabend und ja, seit langer Zeit haben wir mal wieder einen Livestream und natürlich habe ich auch wieder einen Gast aus Irland mit dabei und freue mich sehr, dass wir heute Abend über die Micil Distillery sprechen werden. Pádraic von Micil ist dabei und ja, ihr dürft gespannt sein. Wir werden heute ein bisschen tiefer in die irische Whisky-Geschichte eintauchen und euch mit interessanten Informationen versorgen. So, hello, Pádraic. It's great to have you here in the stream tonight. Thank you very much for taking your time. And maybe you can introduce yourself a bit. What are you doing at Micil and who you are?
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, thank you very much for having me, Marika. And I suppose Danke would be appropriate there. And what's the best greeting at this time of the day? Because I'm familiar with Guten Morgen and Guten Tag, but what's at this time of the day? What's the best way of greeting people?
Guten Abend.
Guten Abend.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so look, I need to learn more German, but anyway, nice to be talking to you all. And so we're here in Galway City, a place called Salt Hill. We're Galway's only operating distillery, and we officially started in 2016. We launched Micil Putteen, and Micil, by the way, is named after my great-great-great-grandfather. We've been distilling in our family for over 170 years. And my brother and I, we're both sixth generation Putteen or distillers. And by the way, for those of you who have your bottle, or our bottles rather, in front of you, you'll see on the back wall there as well, the person in the logo. That's a photo of our late grandfather. So we learned the distilling tradition from our grandfather. And we have a continuous, unbroken family distilling tradition. It is the longest in Ireland today, believe it or not, folks.
Wow. That's great. Yeah, so maybe as I'm living in Hessian and Stefan too, and he just told me, if you say Gute, that's enough instead of good evening or guten Abend. That's like a hi in Hessian. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you, schön.
Yeah. So, okay, we are getting very international. Robert from Sweden is also here.
Robert.
Yes, he just ordered the whiskeys. That's right. Yes.
Excellent.
Here is the Irish guy living in Germany.
Very good.
Very good.
Going, Kevin.
Yeah. Great. So, yeah, he's looking forward to hear about the distillery and the new whiskeys. Yeah. So, as you said, you have the longest distilling history. Maybe we have to start like at the 0 point because you haven't done whiskey, you did poutine. And
correct.
Yes, and I know that there are people, they don't know what poutine is, so maybe you can talk a bit about that and tell us what it is.
Absolutely. So it's the tradition has been in our family for forever. It certainly goes back to our great-great-great-grandfather's time, and so that's three greats in case anybody's counting. And by the way, Micil it's a first name, and just to contextualize this, and if he was not an Irish-speaking person, he would be known as Michael. So Irish or Gaelic is the first language of the distillery, and we're one of the few, I think, who speak Irish as the first language in the distillery. So coming to Putteen, the name of the category and the spirit, I guess it's the original spirit of Ireland. And what a lot of people don't realize, and I will get to the word Putteen and the etymology in a moment, but a lot of people don't realize that Putteen and whiskey were the same spirit historically, and they were only separated by the buying of a license. So yes, indeed, correct. Putteen was illegal in Ireland for hundreds of years, only legalized in 1997. Which, yes, you're adding 2 and 2, and yes, it does equal 4. The 5 generations before my brother and I were illicit distillers. But,
so you were one of the illegals.
Well, I've done nothing illegal, of course.
You're not.
No. We certainly wouldn't have done anything like that, right?
Yes.
But also, there is the expression that a wink is as good as a nod. So there you go. I'll let people read between the lines and figure that one out for themselves. So I guess if you want to track back in terms of dates, we do have a number of key dates in alcohol production here in Ireland, and the monks were the first people to start distilling here. And our earliest written record is in the Red Book of Ossory, which is a monastic text. It's a manuscript, and in it they describe making aquavitae. And aquavitae was translated, of course, into the Gaelic or Irish language. It became known as Ishkebaha. And Ishkebaha, the two words over time became Fushke. Now, today in Connemara and throughout many centuries, we would refer to poteen, in fact, as Fushke. And I hate to bring up too much sort of history, particularly when it doesn't reflect well on some nationalities. However, to give credit where credit is due to the British, they did colonize Ireland. Part of the story, of course, is Anglicization of the language. And of course, Fushke became whiskey by the addition of the letter W. So that's why we have whiskey today. And I'm proud to say that, yes, indeed, whiskey was invented in Ireland. So that's the water of life. Now, people are probably still wondering, but he hasn't explained poteen. Well, it's a simple word. It comes from the Irish word for pot, which is potta, and a small pot then was known as poteen. So poteen is the spirit from the small pot still, and whiskey, of course, is the water of life. And now, I suppose, in terms of how do they separate in terms of their evolution, it happened around 1661, and that's when tax was introduced in Ireland for the first time ever on alcohol. We all decided that it was just terribly unfair and not, how would I put it, suiting us. So we decided to avoid it and evade it. And this frustrated the British Parliament a great deal. So in 1760, they made domestic distilling. So distilling at home was legal up until that year, but they banned that. And in the process, they banned poteen making as well. And I guess you could kind of trace the evolution of early modern day whiskey to that particular date. That's when you see more and more licensed distilling, urban distilling, port city distilling, as in Galway, Cork, Belfast, Dublin, etc. Very little, if any, rural distilling. But hopefully that paints a bit of a picture in terms of the location in geographical terms. Where was poteen making taking place? If you draw a line horizontally through Ireland from West Cork to Belfast, generally speaking, as a rule, the further west you go and the further north you go, the more likely you are to find poteen distillation. And the records, of course, that we can rely upon for poteen production, they tell us about the confiscations historically of illicit stills. So that's a fairly reliable record.
Yeah. This is always like when you hear where you can get poteen, it's like in Donegal or Connemara or So
we always start with Connemara, to be fair, because that's where we're from. But yes, we must give a good mention to Donegal as well.
Okay, that's fine. So I know you picked up some glasses and we got some poteen here, so maybe we can have a taste of it and tell the people what it tastes like. So you have two.
Yes, so I have the classic here in front of me. So going to, again, I'm still struggling to work the camera, but I'm going to pour a little sample here. And this one is 100% Irish malted barley. We also infuse it with a local botanical called bog bean. And interestingly, bog bean was mentioned in the first ever record we have of aquavitae, which further enhances the sort of the fact that poteen and whiskey were the same historically. So all Irish malted barley. We use yeast, of course, water, and the bog bean botanical. By the way, the monks knew that the bog bean was great for numerous things, including, this isn't according to me, this is according to their historical, I suppose, information on medicine. So poteen was meant to be, or the bog bean in particular, was meant to be great for blood cleansing, for digestive ailments, and also as an aphrodisiac, believe it or not, which I found particularly interesting, especially with the monks. I don't know how they figured it out, but as I said, they were supposed to be experts in medicine. Anyway, going back to the nose here, we're going to find it's quite a... oh, Tina, how are you, Tina? Slante?
Yeah, and she can have some poteen with us now. She has it at home, so...
That's good. Love to see that. So what we have here on the nose, some floral characteristics from the bog bean. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the sweetness in the spirit. It's very much a honey-like sweetness. There's certainly elements of spice there. For me, it's like pink peppercorn, white peppercorn, just mild, not terribly strong spices, so sweeter kind of spices.
I get also some citrus notes.
Yes, absolutely. Any citrus in particular, or is it just more general citrus?
No, it's for me today. It's kind of like a grapefruit, lime.
Grapefruit, yeah, absolutely. And little tip for people, actually, as they nose their whiskies or their spirits, it's a great tip to, as you inhale through the nose, to also inhale through the mouth. So if you open your mouth and inhale through the mouth as well as you inhale through the nose, you're going to find that the spirit actually sort of coats your palate a bit without tasting it. So it kind of helps you interpret the nose even before tasting. So then we better take a little sip on the palate, and to raise the proper Irish toast, of course, it's a slante.
Slante, yes. Yeah, so it's very mild. So it's I think it's not like a typical new make. For me, this is like poteen. As you said, there is a botanical in there, and you definitely get the sweetness again.
Yes.
And also a bit kind of a floral note, and it's like a really nice, easy sipping drink.
It is really. So yeah, I totally agree on the spiciness and the sweetness. The sweetness is very much like a honey-like sweetness, and you do get some floral characteristics on the palate as well. The bog bean actually gives the spirit a bit of texture too. Now, yes, of course, you can certainly sip this spirit neat, and we highly recommend you do so. However, it works incredibly well in different long drinks and cocktails. So the Micil Mule is one of our favorite serves. It's ginger beer, a wedge of lime, squeeze in the lime juice, lots of ice. It's incredibly refreshing. The other one then is the likes of an espresso martini. So again, taking out the vodka, putting poteen in instead. Irish coffees are amazing. So what the poteen actually does for those cocktails that traditionally have the vodka is they really impart this wonderful depth of spice and flavor. And it's we obviously have that other dairy-based product as well, which may at some stage make its way over to Germany. So it certainly adds flavor there as well. So yeah, that's the classic Micil Irish poteen. And so any questions from anyone on the classic?
Yes, I have a question, because I've seen that you're writing by hand on the bottle which batch and the bottle number.
Yes.
So how many bottles are one batch?
One batch. Wait, we see.
Around.
So I had to do the multiplication there in my in the Irish language. You're talking about 240 bottles in a single batch. So tiny.
That's really tiny. Yeah, that's not a lot. Yeah.
It's not a lot, no. So that's roughly a week's production, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a small distillery.
We are a small distillery, but we just, I suppose, we haven't publicly acknowledged this, but we will be announcing some very exciting news, hopefully early next year, about our newer distilling facility in South Connemara, which will ensure, I suppose, our capacity for the years ahead, and it'll be really exciting. It is a very exciting time for us to be planning this new facility, and all that extra capacity that brings.
Very good. Yeah. So Mick McGuire says, best of luck to you and your gang. My wife is from the Galtres in Galway, so has an extra interest in this. So
excellent. Thanks a million, Mike. Gurmila Mahad.
Yes, very good. So
it's a very small world, isn't it, Marika? To have Irish speakers on the call.
Always, because the Irish are my friends. So the Germans and the Irish are always coming together in my live stream, so that's fine.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So and the other special poutine you have is the Heritage Edition.
Absolutely.
And I know this is still a smaller production.
It is. So if you thought that 60 bottles per day was small, think around 50, 55. So the classic poutine is 100% Irish malted barley. The heritage there that Marika has in her hand, or had in her hand, it's 80% barley, it's 20% oats, and this is I suppose the first poutine that we tried there was unpeated, so there's no smoky characteristic to it. Now the heritage poutine is peaty, it's smoky. Again, it's 100% Irish grown cereals and Irish malted cereals, and believe it or not, it was the first peated Irish cereals to be commercially, I suppose, available in a poutine, or any spirit for that matter, in quite a long time. We're certainly talking at a minimum 60 years, in Irish history. So quite a long time of not having Irish peated malted cereals. And again, this is another family recipe. So what people need to realize, I suppose, is how come it's peated? Well, peat was the fuel that was used historically to heat up these kilns that were used for drying out the malts, and therefore you'd have that peaty and smoky characteristic in the spirit. And also, the other thing is that that's going to influence, of course, what we're doing in terms of whiskey. So I have a little sample poured here of the heritage. Do you have a sample there, or will I just talk people through it? So incredibly different spirit versus the classic Micil Irish poutine. This one immediately greets you with a different type of sweetness, and certainly I'm sure some of you will pick up on the smoke or the peatiness here. It's certainly more of a molasses or treacly kind of sweetness, as opposed to the honey sweetness that you get in the previous poutine. It's not as fruity, perhaps, as the classic. It's more depth and maybe more dry, and certainly quite spicy there. But again, that peat is coming through there. Now, by the way, the peat or the turf that's coming through, it's our own turf, which we harvest ourselves in Connemara. So we still keep up that tradition. And if people visit us during the spring or summer or early autumn, they may even be able to experience a day working in the bog. And I shouldn't really say working, because it's hardly any work. It's a great experience. So if there's any volunteers, you'd be very welcome to join us. So yeah, that's the nose. Anything that you pick up, Marika, that's different to what I'm saying?
No, yes, for me, it's definitely, you get really straight on the nose the peat and the sweetness, so like a sweet peat again.
Sweet peat, yeah, I like that.
And yes, of course, not really fruity notes, and it's totally different. And
it is. Now, what I will say is the oats, without a shadow of a doubt, once you get a sample of this on the palate, the oats gives it a wonderful vibrancy on the palate. It gives it a creaminess. It's a bigger mouthfeel than the classic Irish poutine, maybe a bit oilier, but certainly the creaminess coming through there from the oats. So that 20% of oats, makes all the difference in terms of mouthfeel and in terms of vibrancy. And again, this is typical of some of the older pot still Irish whiskey recipes that did exist historically. But we will be trying a pot still whiskey now very shortly as well. We might delve into the whole history around that as well if we're trying the pot still whiskey. I'd certainly like to try it anyway.
Yes. Okay, that's good. So yeah, I would say, would you like to start with the pot still or with the blended whiskey?
Yeah, I get. Do you know what? We've had the peated heritage now, so I think the next logical move is to stay peated and go to Inverin, and Inverin has a what do you call it? A special place in my heart. It is our local village, so that's where I'm from. That's where Jimmy is from, my brother. So of course we're very proud of this area. And the Inverin whiskey, by the way, these are independent bottlings. The Inverin means it's just the place where we're from, but it's very much representing the Connemara style of whiskey. And what does that represent? Well, it represents peatiness for a start. That's one thing. It represents a smooth and fruity whiskey and sweet whiskey. Now, the other thing is, this is where whiskey and poteen differ. I remember you mentioning, Marika, how smooth the poteen was and how it wasn't like new make whiskey. So not to get over technical about it, but there is a difference in terms of how the poteen spirit and whiskey spirit would be collected. And of course, just talking about the spirit run, we don't collect all of the spirit as one complete unit. Just to sort of put it in simple layman's terms, you would have the heads cut, which is the first spirit to come off the still. You separate that from the next part of the spirit, which is called hearts, and that's the core of the spirit. That's the really good stuff. And then at the end, you have the tails. So heads, hearts, and tails. And folks, we are going to be testing your knowledge on this at some other stage. So make sure you've remembered this. Otherwise, you might get into trouble.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So Pádraic is coming to Nuremberg when the show can be in February. So everybody who's there will be asked a question.
Yes, and we'll be expecting you to remember.
Yes.
Now's your time to ask the question again if you need me to repeat anything. So coming back to sort of the hearts cut, you need a very tight hearts cut in poteen because the spirit is typically unaged. So again, ours is pretty tight, and again, it makes for a very smooth, drinkable spirit without it spending any time in cask. Now, in fact, today, under Irish and European law, you cannot age poteen for any longer than 90 days. So here's where whiskey and poteen now differ in the modern sense. So Irish whiskey, of course, as I'm sure many of you are aware, must be aged for a minimum of 3 years on the island of Ireland before it can legally be called Irish whiskey. So similar rules apply with poteen, but there is a 90-day limit. So again, it's a geographically indicated product. And so, yeah, both geographically indicated products. There are two spirits that are, I suppose, part of three spirits in Ireland that are geographically indicated. So you have Irish whiskey, Irish poteen, and Irish cream are the three Irish categories that are protected in terms of how they're made, which ingredients are used, and geographical terms, etc. So anyway, back here to whiskey. One of the points I was going to make in terms of this whiskey and the inspiration around it is smaller casks. So one of the cask components here in terms of finishing the whiskey is a smaller ex-bourbon cask. So we took ex-bourbon casks, we got them resized from 200 litres down to about 140 litres, and that's to emphasize the wood spices, the vanillins, the sweetness, and all that great stuff that you get from really good oak wood. The other cask component then, well, there's two cask components as well as the ex-bourbon, the special ex-bourbon, let's call them that. By the way, really interesting as well, the ex-bourbon casks have been decharred and recharred. That means we've taken off the old char and recharred them again. And I guess, you know, that really again opens up the wood again into a fresh layer of char. Really encourages, I suppose, interaction with the wood and giving it that extra sort of sweetness and that extra kind of layer of wood spice. So the other two cask components are Pedro Jimenez, which of course is a sherry cask finish, and of course it's the sweetest of the sherries. So again, really emphasizing the sherry notes of this whiskey. It gives it a lovely fruitiness, but it's not, I suppose, you know, how to put it, 100% like, you know, some of your sherry cask finishes. It has a nice balance of wood spice and the fruity notes. And again, this is kind of what we wanted to do in terms of emphasizing a Connemara type of whiskey. So by the way, it's a blend. It's a 5-part blend. So we have 2 types of grain whiskey in this whiskey. So we have grain whiskey that was aged in ex-bourbon. Okay, I'm sure most people are familiar with that.
And Robert was already looking, and he's really looking forward for the chestnut cask.
Yes. So we're going to mention the chestnut cask now in a moment. So we'll get through the whiskey components first. So we have, as well as the ex-bourbon aged grain whiskey, we have grain whiskey that has been aged in virgin oak. Okay, so really delivering wonderful depth of wood spice. I guess what you would call maybe wood shavings or dusty kind of shavings, and as well as that wonderful depth of color and loads of vanillins, loads of wood character. So that's the 2 grain whiskey components. So then onto single pot still. So that's one of the other components. And by the way, for anybody who picks up a bottle, there's a link on our website. There's a link on the bottle rather that brings you to our website, which explains in depth each of the cask components and each of the whiskey components. So it's full transparency. We want to teach people in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So the other thing I would say is the other components. So now we have 3 components. We also use single malt. So single malt and ex-bourbon, and a nice little one there is the triple distilled peated malt, and that's the whiskey, I suppose, that gives our blend here the smoky characteristics. So quite a high proportion in this whiskey of both single malt and single pot still. So although of course there's lots of grain whiskey in there, much more expensive grain whiskey in terms of the virgin the virgin oak, and again we're really emphasizing flavor here. We're trying to emphasize as much flavor as possible. So I'm sure people are parched after listening to all of that. Let's get to nosing. And
I have to add something. When I write the German product description, and I got your sales sheets, and I got all these components and how it looks like and what it is, I sat down and I was looking for that about 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, this is that part, this is this, and this is that, and it influences this, and that's this. And then I was like, okay, I think I have to write it down. And then I wrote it down, and then I sent it to 2 people, and they got also your sales sheet. And I said, okay, please look if that's right now, translate it. It was not so easy.
I'm sorry for making it difficult. It wasn't my intention. Oh yes, before I forget, chestnut cask. Again, because we're harvesting peat in Connemara, we really wanted to try and get some peat influence from that region into the whiskey. So what we did was, it's a special project, but of course our heritage poteen, I'll say no more, is typically unaged. However, we will be doing a distillery special. So we've actually put the heritage for 90 days into a virgin Spanish chestnut cask. And of course, that Spanish chestnut cask then took in the flavor of that peated poteen. So again, there's Connemara peat influencing this Inverin whiskey. So we just thought, you know, it's important to us to give it a kiss of Connemara turf. So it's not, you know, very apparent, but it's certainly there to a little degree. But so, Marika, what do you think? Let's hear what you think of, you know, the nose here. Would you agree with the vanillins?
Definitely, definitely. You've got lots of vanilla, kind of a sweetness. You have again some citrus, some fruit notes. I would say some lighter fruit notes.
Yeah, and you know, the peatiness. Am I right in saying that it's not like it's not a very heavily peated whiskey at all?
No.
It's a nice undertone as opposed to something that's you know, big and bold. But there's no mistaking. There's certainly peat there, but it's a sweet peat.
Yes, it's the kind of peat Tina and I like. Because Tina is also not really into heavily peated whiskey, and me too. So this is the kind we like, peated whiskey.
Wonderful. So is it fair to say that we're doing peated whiskey well in Ireland at the moment then?
Yes, you do.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's nice. I also like the taste because you, of course, it's a blended whiskey, but it's a good blended whiskey. And I think blended whiskeys are often more complicated than doing a single malt whiskey because you have to do all those components together.
Yes.
And here you at the first you get the peat, but then it goes away. You get the vanilla, you get some fruit notes, and it's smooth, but it's also long lasting in the mouth. It's not like, okay, I drink it and it's gone. So very nice.
It really packs an awful lot of flavor, you know, for a young blend. We wanted to influence the whiskey as much as possible with our cask finishing, and we're delighted really with the result. And like you said, a good long finish. It's good at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. And like you said, lots of fruitiness and what else are we talking there? Vanillins, wood spice. Yeah, so really pleasant overall. So typically we sip this one neat, but it works exceptionally well as well with gin. You know, this may sound terrible to people, but if you are having you know, more than a neat glass, you want to drink it in a mixed drink. It makes a phenomenal whiskey and ginger ale. So a bit of lime, ginger ale, a fantastic long drink, really refreshing. But perhaps people watching or listening in, there might be more neat drinkers, but I can tell you it works exceptionally well both ways anyway.
Maybe in winter neat and in summer as a long drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I tried it, by the way. It gets pretty hot here in the distillery sometimes, so I tried it on Saturday with ginger ale. Have to say it was delicious. You know. Oh, tried it in a hot toddy as well.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's for winter time now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, terribly happy with the whiskey. And again, just a couple of little notes as well. It's non-chill filtered, and it's non-chill filtered, and no caramel coloring. And yes, Tina is asking the question. So total transparency there in terms of the whiskey. So if you go to our website, it'll tell you that we've sourced the whiskey from GND. That's Great Northern Distillery. We've then bought the casks, vatted the different components. So we came up with the blend. We vatted the components, put the whiskies into our casks. And the original plan was to do a 6-month aging. However, just being very conscious about doing everything perfectly, we weren't entirely happy at 6 months, so we gave it a bit more time. So it was almost 9 months actually when we said it was good to bottle. So when we say we're happy with it, we're being understated, you know.
Very good. Yeah. So and Great Northern is doing great liquids. So when you recask it and have a good cask, so you just can do a good whiskey.
You can, yeah, and it's really important. It's you know, it's not to be underestimated that you really need to spend money on wood. And obviously, there's many independent bottlings out there, and you know, they, which is fine. It's perfect. They buy different components, they put them together, and bottle it. that's perfect. But really, for us, it was really important to have our influence on the whiskey and to add that extra value.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, great. So we got already the comment that Ice Hockey God loves the pot still. So he tried it already. So and we definitely got already orders for the whiskey. So I'm really looking forward to what the people think about your whiskeys, because
Good.
my opinion is that they're really good.
Thank you so much. I share your opinion.
But I can show you my favorite one.
Yeah. Oh no.
I did drink that all by myself, but I've heard
That's
already
okay.
some samples. But this one I tried already 2 or 3 times.
That's good. No,
Yeah.
that's a very good sign. So will we talk about the Earl's Island whiskey now?
Yes, we can do. Yeah.
Yeah. So my bottle appears to be quite low as well. Well,
Yeah.
I do have a fuller one. So, oh, I do. Sorry. Let me just show a full bottle here because I just really want to show people the color of.
The color is really nice.
It's amazing, I suppose. It's
Yeah.
again no coloring added, but it's a beautiful reddish color there, and that's partly down to the cask finishing that we've done. And this is Earl's Island, and it's part of the series of whiskies we're going to be releasing from Galway City. And historically, we would have had 22 operating distilleries here in Galway, and many of them along the banks of the River Corrib. So yes, we had a massive thirst for great whiskey, and one of the islands then that produced whiskey was called Earl's Island, and actually the part of the current university is located on that island. By the way, these islands are separated by canals and the river, so they're not out at sea, so to speak, just in case you haven't been to Galway. But these canals would have had many mills along the way, because we get a huge amount of rain here in Galway. This was very useful for driving industry. So the rain was good for a reason. Not so good if you're trying to grow crops, but in any case, people don't come to Galway for the warm, dry climate. They come for the feeling it gives them. So we would encourage people to visit at some stage. But anyway, let's get back into the history around this whiskey. So people know the origins now of the name. And again, when this is the city style of whiskey that we've created, we really wanted to stay true to tradition here. So it is a single pot still. It's triple distilled. And I think people might find it interesting in terms of the whole single pot still. Where did it actually come from as a style? So I've already told you that we've avoided, the long arm of the law in making poteen or making fushke. And the legitimate whiskey distillers were no different. They were trying to be efficient when it came to paying taxes. So a malt tax was introduced by British Parliament, which meant that the raw material being used to make whiskey was taxed heavily. Now, most people would think, oh, that's it, we must pay the full tax. But you have to remember that Irish distillers, and particularly, well, look, they were resourceful. Is a quality that we try to embody ourselves in our company. But they were resourceful, so they didn't just pay the 100% tax on the malt. What they did was they changed their mash bill, their recipe. So they started using unmalted barley. So that halved their tax bill. So they started using approximately 50% barley. And indeed, so barley, like raw barley, and then malted barley, and other cereals were also added, such as oats, wheat, and rye. And in actual fact, just as a side note, we do have a cask ownership offering. So we're selling the first 240 casks that have ever been distilled in Galway. So we are laying down whiskey. And by the way, just to be clear, before we did any independent whiskey bottling, it was paramount to us that we would be laying down our own whiskey first, which we did do. So our oldest whiskey now in cask is just over a year old. So it's nice to see it aging, and I have to say we're incredibly happy with the spirit that we're laying down. And anyway, if people are interested in that, there's all the information is there on our website, and if people have questions, very happy to answer. But it's very limited offering anyway, and it's in 50-litre casks. So back here to triple distilled pot still whiskey. And you have, again, it's just the one whiskey component, triple distilled. You have 50% malted barley, 50% unmalted. So the unmalted barley gives you a really great oiliness to the spirit. It gives it lovely, vibrant spiciness. So that's a real characteristic of a pot still whiskey, that lovely spiciness. And it's so much has been written about trying to describe the pot still spiciness, but it's once you taste it and you compare it to single malt, you get it. And anyway, this has an abundance of that. So we finished this whiskey in, by the way, the entirety of the pot still was originally aged in ex-bourbon, first fills, and then we moved it into Bordeaux casks. That's 75% of the spirit was finished in Bordeaux red wine, and 25% was aged in peated quarter casks. So they would have had Scotch whiskey in them. So there's a totally valid story as well around the Bordeaux cask finish. So believe it or not, Galway, as a port, was the single largest importer of Bordeaux red wine here in Ireland historically, and we were number 2 importer between Ireland and England. So just imagine that for a moment, historically, how much wine, and particular Bordeaux wine, was coming into Galway. And we have many, certainly a handful of chateaus in Bordeaux that have Irish origins, and those people, I suppose, who have the Irish origins, many of those were the Earls that fled when the first, I suppose, signs of British conquest were happening. They left Ireland, I guess, in search of their own freedom. So that's why you have the likes of, for instance, Chateau Lynch Badge there in Bordeaux. Anyway, totally relevant to use the Bordeaux red wine cask finish. And a little hint here, we may have other cask finishes from different areas around Europe coming in the next number of months to a year. So Galway has this distinctly Latin feel as a city. So again, we were importing a huge amount of wines and fortified wines from Latin Europe. When you go to Galway, you'll see that the natives certainly have pretty dark features typically. So again, some people would be very much look right at home down in Spain, because of the dark hair, etc. So and it's no surprises from our Latin European trading history. So even some of the street names, I'll just give maybe a couple of examples. You have Spanish Parade, which is down near the Spanish Arch. So lots of the place names in the direction of our Latin trading past. And also, no harm in mentioning that there's lots of evidence of the old distilleries, so including Distillery Road, etc., up near the university here in Galway. So important that we actually, the peat element is really important there. We wanted to add a really light textural peat to the spirit. And part of that is because, again, that peat tradition, we'll say Galway is on the doorstep of Connemara. Lots of peat or turf was being brought into Galway city to be traded. It was one of the biggest commodities traded in Galway, amongst other things. So before anthracite coal became the material for drying out the malts, peat was the fuel of choice. So yes, there was that tradition of peated whiskey in Galway as well. But not to say that we didn't have an unpeated tradition, but that's the later tradition. So let's get to the nose. So for me, immediately, strawberries and cream.
And some, I got also some cherries, and like Kevin said, that's the wine finish that interested him a lot. Yes, and then your bottle is on the way. Should be with you tomorrow or something.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we look forward to people's feedback. But the feedback here in Ireland over the past week has been tremendous. We're blown away really by all the positive feedback. So fingers crossed, your own followers will like these two whiskies. So strawberries and cream, and lots of light fruity character coming through there on the
Yeah.
nose.
And also what I like, and I think what's important about the pot still is that you get these pot still spices. So it's not like this very smooth kind of like a single malt. So there is something tickling your nose and it's like a
Yes.
spice note, and a pot still needs that.
It does, and
Yeah.
they're typically oily as well because those
Yeah.
unmalted cereals, they have an abundance of oil, and not that it's lacking in the single malt, but just in terms of differences here, you'll certainly notice that, and yeah, the spiciness is certainly there. It's a lovely sensation and flavor.
Yeah.
Also, I think you're getting a lot of, for me, like. Baked apples, stewed apples.
Yeah.
Maybe,
And
maybe
it's
more
like,
pear, maybe more pear than apples.
yeah, but also kind of like these really red apples and with kind of Christmas spices. So
Yes,
okay, we
cinnamon,
have the time of the year.
clove.
Maybe I just compare it with
No,
that, but
no,
that's,
you're dead right. Yeah, cinnamon, clove, very
yeah,
much
things like
there.
that. Yeah. So I recommended it as the Christmas whiskey. I was asking by a blog, but from Neil from the German Irish whiskey blog, what's my Christmas whiskey? And I said this one.
Excellent.
And because I think when we're
Thank you,
talking
Sean.
about pricing, we are selling for 48 euros.
Okay,
And
really competitive.
it's such a good price point for such a good whiskey.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
maybe we should have a try.
we made yeah. Let's take a little sip here.
Julia's here. Hi.
Hey, Julia.
I like it because again, you get these pot still spices. You get fruit notes. You definitely get some of these Bordeaux red wine notes, dark berries.
Yeah, you got the berries, but I think you hit the nail on the head there with the red apples as well.
Yes. Yes. So this is for me kind of a, let's say like a kind of a new pot still whiskey because it has not the typical pot still notes we know from big distilleries. And
It's
but
young. It's young, but
young,
it's
but it's,
certainly very high quality.
yes, definitely, definitely. And you can trust me, I tasted lots of young pot still whiskeys during the last 1.5 years. And for me, this is one of the best ones because
Thank you.
you do not really get any new make character. You get whiskey notes, and this is
Yes.
what I really like.
Brilliant. Well, I'm delighted to hear that. And again, I think the peat, that little subtle touch of peat, you won't really detect much of it on the palate. It's more textural, as I said, but it certainly helps to, give it more of those, as you say, whiskey notes rather than new make notes.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And again, it's also long lasting on the mouth, so it's not just drinking and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Great
need to
finish.
give the comment. Claudia, you will get your bottles, no problem. And also the orange spice gin. Yes, the orange spice gin is great.
It certainly is, and the orange spice gin. Will we move on to the spiced orange gin now? Any other?
Maybe no. We have to answer one more question because
Sure, no
Tina is
problem.
asking if you're coming to the Whiskey Life in Dublin in March.
Yes, we are.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes, we
Because
are.
Tina cannot travel from Berlin to Nuremberg, but she can travel from Berlin to Dublin.
Oh, it's a shorter journey, I heard.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have the orange spice gin here, but
That's okay. I'll will we talk through that one, or will we talk through the classic gin?
oh, we can talk about the orange spice gin because I drank all the samples you sent me because I definitely liked it.
So here we are,
Yes.
Micil spiced orange gin. Again, struggling with the camera. Don't know why. It's flipped around, so it changes the directions of everything. But anyway, distinct from the core gin. So let me put the two of them side by side. You know, they're obviously very similar, but in terms of packaging. But you can see the orange neck label there on the spiced orange. So our classic Connemara gin, there I said it. It's very much emphasising our Connemara heritage. So we use 4 wild flowers and herbs that we handpick in Connemara in that gin. It makes it incredibly distinct. It's very floral, citrusy, spicy, and really, it's a although it does appeal to, like, you know, traditional gin drinkers, it really appeals to people who aren't traditionally gin drinkers as well. It's a very contemporary style, so it's not like your London dry. So yes, the juniper is very much there, but it's a really pleasant and not excessively dry juniper character. So it's not a London dry. Made in the same way, but the kind of the juniper notes are much more delicate. So it's certainly more of a citric driven gin. So really refreshing. One of the best tests ever with the gin, by the way, folks, is to try it neat. And our one certainly, not only does it pass the test, it excels the test because it has exceptional smoothness, even by itself. And we had this approach maybe year and a half, 2 years ago from a subscription company in the UK. They have the biggest gin subscription club in England. And they said, can we try your gin? We're like, sure, okay. So, you know, it's kind of frustrating sometimes getting requests, from companies, whatever, can we get this or that? Anyway, we trusted this one and we said, look, let's try it out. So we sent them a sample and they loved the gin and they said, gee, will you send us another sample? It went so well with our tasting panel that we'd love to try another sample. So we're like, okay. So we sent it out anyway. And anyway, then the next phone call or email was, look, we would love to work with you for one of our months. And we were like, okay, didn't really realize what that would entail. But basically, it meant that we had to produce over 100,000 bottles of our new varietal gin that we had just basically come up with. So our Micil Spiced Orange Gin is inspired by the Galway city traditions. So I suppose, again, emphasizing those spices and fruits that were coming in from Latin Europe. We wanted to color this gin, if you like. By the way, it's not a flavored gin, just to be clear. It's a distilled gin. We don't do flavored gins. So it's 42% ABV. It is distilled. It's not there's no even vapor infusion. It's all pot distilled. So you're really maximizing all those flavors. So yeah, this one is distinctly citric. You're really going to get some of those abundant, orange characteristics or citric characteristics. By the way, for those people who kind of say, look, I don't like orange, that's no hassle. It's not the dominant characteristic here, but it's certainly very detectable, as is the spice. Now, both of our gins are quite spicy anyway, but in a very balanced way. It's you wouldn't say, oh, that is distinctly sort of heavily spicy. It's more of a balanced affair. So yeah, so really great on the nose, very inviting in terms of being pleasant and citric and sweet. And then I'll take a little sip. Sorry,
Yeah.
Mariah, you can have a sip of the classic gin.
I take some whiskey.
So again, incredibly smooth on the palate. You could drink this neat. However, most people have it as a gin and tonic. And my recommendation is always go for unflavored tonic waters with our gin. So premium unflavored. So for instance, don't use an elderflower flavored tonic water. You're really masking all the lovely nuances that we've worked so hard to, get into our gins. So again, you don't want to mask them. They work really great in cocktails. So I suppose our core gin, wonderful in the sour. Bramble makes a superb martini. Oh yeah, spiced orange gin makes an incredible Negroni, just as a different,
Okay, great.
stirred down type cocktail there.
I have to tell you what we are in Germany drinking this winter is Glühgin. So this is warm gin.
Oh
And
really?
it doesn't work with every gin. I found one which was working very well, and also with the spiced orange gin was one sample I tried it because of these orange notes. So
Yes.
you have to heat up apple juice with a slice of orange, with some cinnamon and some cloves, and then you have to add in some gin, and it's
Oh, wonderful.
delicious.
Could
This
you
is
send
the
me a
winter drink.
recipe or point me in the right direction? Because I want to try
Yes,
that.
yes, I can do. It doesn't
Excellent.
work with your normal gin because there are too many citrus notes in it,
That's okay.
but it works really good with the spiced orange gin.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
a tipple for tonight or some other evening, but I'll certainly be trying it out.
Yes. Yeah. This is something it's really, really nice in winter times when you don't want to have a gin tonic.
Yeah, you want something maybe a bit more warming and comforting, and it really is the time of the year for mulled wines and
Yes.
just warmer drinks, with spices and yeah, literally just a bit of heat.
Yep. Yeah. So
Even
it works.
here, even here with our mild climate, it gets cold.
Yes. So you can also have it in Ireland. That's fine. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So
Any questions there from people? Hopefully they're
yeah, I
everything's
think they're really listening. So here's some comments. Tina says she's traveling more likely to Dublin because this is special to her heart. Yeah, I
she's
can.
traveling to Dublin because
It's special to her heart.
of course, of course,
Yeah, I can understand that.
yeah, I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, great. Yeah, so I'm really thankful that we have your range now here in Germany, and I think these are all great products, and you're open for tours for German tourists.
We are indeed, yeah. So look, they got just being brutally honest. My German, of course, is I have a few words
That's
for
fine.
pleasantries. So our tours are run in the English language. But yeah, you're all very welcome to come and visit us. If you just go to our website, you'll see the schedule. We're open until the end of December, and then we'll reopen again from the start of January. And we'll be doing tours normally from Tuesday to Saturday. And we're expecting a really busy season ahead. It was a pretty good October, November, December. One of the reasons we were a bit delayed, obviously, is because of COVID. But the other reason was we were refurbishing some areas of the distillery, including our cask owner office. So basically, it's where we, when cask buyers are coming in to maybe sample some new make or some young whiskey, that's where they'd come to decide on what distillate and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, great. So Tina thinks that she's coming to Galway in June. Great.
Oh,
So,
excellent. Well, you'll be very welcome, Tina. We look forward to seeing you in June.
and I will definitely be over next year also because
Brilliant.
I have been so many times to Ireland, but I have never been to Galway. So
Oh, you
I
will.
need to change that next year.
I hate to sound sort of like we're arrogant, but this is the best place in
I
Ireland.
know, I know. I often heard it, and I definitely have to be there.
And
Yeah,
by the way, the reason I say it is because everyone else says it. It's fair to say then, isn't it?
yeah, it's fine because when you see the pictures of Galway and what's happening there, you definitely have to be there. So
Oh, it's a
yeah,
great city, and you're on the doorstep of Connemara. You're not too far from Dublin. You're not too far from Shannon.
yeah,
So you've got the best of both worlds: city life, country life. You've got lively music, atmosphere, festivals. Then you've got the wild Atlantic Way there. So it's all there.
yeah, great. So I will be there. So Werner says, it's really a pleasure to hear you talking about your product. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. And should I pronounce that name Werner, or how would I?
Werner, yes.
Werner,
Yeah.
Again, I'm just trying to learn the little nuances of the German language and how to pronounce names correctly, etc.
That's fine. Can you pronounce my name correct?
I hope so. Mareike?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Will you say it again for me once more?
Mareike.
Mareike.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know that English-speaking people have always troubles with pronouncing my name. It's very hard to pronounce.
It's not really. They're just, I think, they need to try harder.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. Well, you see, I'm a former school teacher. I used to teach at secondary level, and I used to teach at university level. So I know, in terms of when people are making an effort and when they're not making an effort.
Very good. Very good. So
in language terms.
Yes. That's great. Yeah. So thank you very much for taking your time leading us through your products.
You're very welcome.
And we can tell the people, firstly, the pot still whiskey is in our special release Christmas tasting set. So if you would like to have a taste of it, you can order the Christmas tasting pack special releases. We will have a Zoom tasting for that on 6th of January. That will be in German. I will do that.
Okay.
And then Micil Distillery will be the distillery of the month in January, and I'm sure that Pádraic and I will do a great Zoom tasting.
Looking forward to it.
There we will do, of course, a spirit, because we will try poaching, whiskey, gin, and food.
Oh, wow.
I will have some ideas about that, what we do, because in Zoom tastings we do food pairing.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Sounds great.
So thank you very much. And
thank you very much, Mareike.
Yeah. And thank you to all the listeners, and have a great week, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
See you now. Take care.